I'm going to also invite our session moderator. So I'd like to please invite architect C.R. Raju, who's the Joint Honorary Secretary with IIA. In fact, he's also the principal architect at C.R. Raju Associates, having practice of more than 40 years. And he will be spearheading this panel discussion. And joining him, I also invite all our panelists here. Let's also have the beautiful slides on the screen for all of our delegates. Architect C.R. Raju, of course, is spearheading this fabulous panel discussion. He will bring in his 40 years of experience and insights with us and extract beautiful perspectives from all of our speakers. Let's quickly move on to also introduce our panelists, Architect Divya Kush, who's the president of IIA. It's wonderful to see him being armed with 4 decades of experience and as he shares his insights. Joining them, we also have it as Architect Habib Khan, who's the president of the COA. And thank you very much, sir, for joining us this morning to share your insights as well. And moving on, may I also please invite Architect Zaveen Zakarias, who's the president of Triple ID. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us this morning. May I further invite Mr. V. Suresh, who's the chairman of IGBC. Thank you very much again, sir. Looks like the collective experience of this entire panel is absolutely humongous and beautiful. And with that, our final panelist, we have Mr. Satish Magar, who is the president of CREDAI. So, Mr. Satish, thank you very much, sir, for joining us as well. With that, without any further delay, we're talking about self-reliance, and let's get all the insights flowing. Architect C.R. Raju will spearhead this panel discussion. I hand over the proceedings to you, Raju, sir. Over to you.
Self-reliance is something which we are all introspecting and look forward how this can contribute to the overall growth for the engagement and benefit for all sections of our society. In fact, our built environment was largely self-reliant for many centuries. With industrial and international trade and globalization, we have seen a shift in our processes and design of our built environment. Self-reliance is not only about materials alone. There are many aspects to it. To discuss about this, we have an eminent panel. President of the Indian Institute of Architects, Architect Divya Kush, who has a very long stint with the Institute in various responsibilities, and stalwarts from allied institutions. President of Council of Architecture, Architect Habib Khan, a good friend who has in recent times rejuvenated the Council of Architecture, an award-winning architect for many of his projects, and involved in academics as head of an institution with an extraordinary environment which he has designed. And now we have President of Triple ID, Architect Zaveen Zakarias, a very passionate architect and interior designer, has won many awards for her projects and has redefined how leadership can make a difference to an institution with her innovative ideas and scale of programs and events for the members. She is an inspiration to all of us. We have with us the chairman of IGBC, Mr. V. Suresh, who is an excellent leader, a very articulate and friendly, served on many institutions, including HUDCO, and has been spearheading the sustainability and green building concepts as chairman. We have with us President of CREDAI, Mr. Satish Magar, affectionately called as Dada, a pioneer in large-scale multi-use development of large neighborhoods. Magarapata is a classic example of multi-use built environment where concepts like walk to work, management of facilities and utilities by members of the families of the promoters is a very good initiative. Now I invite Architect Divya Kush to initiate the discussion with his ideas. But before that, I would just mention a few points which he can articulate. That factors that can encourage self-reliance in the built environment, how IIA as an institution can spread awareness about locally available resources, can government policies help, sustainability in architecture and what it means practically. Over to you, Architect Divya Kush. You have 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the nice introduction and the clear thoughts you have about self-reliance. This is a hot topic. See, whenever the country is in crisis, whenever the society is in crisis, whenever the families are in crisis, we always talk about self-reliance. Self-reliance is something which has been taught to us right from our childhood. But when things go well, we forget about it. We talk about self-reliance only when we are in crisis. And today we are facing crisis on many fronts, whether it is pandemic, whether it is issues with the border with our neighboring countries, whether it is economic recession, list is endless. And that is why everybody is talking about self-reliance. Our Prime Minister is talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is very topical at the moment. Self-reliance cannot be restricted to a particular sector, When we talk about self-reliance in construction industry, it cannot be self-reliant as a standalone phenomena. The country as a whole has to be self-reliant. How do we become self-reliant is more important. Why we should be self-reliant is equally important. I was this morning referring to a English prose book, which was my textbook in my first year of architecture, Sciences Speaks. And that's where I have an essay from Charles Darwin. It is Theory of Natural Selection and Survival of the Fittest. We will be selected for survival by the nature only when we are self-sufficient. We have to be fittest if we have to survive. And I also trying to think about it, why it is important for a country like India to be self-reliant. And why it may not be so important for countries with the smaller size and all that, which in any case cannot be self-reliant in all its needs. But a country like India has to be self-reliant for all its important needs, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is strategical issues, whether it is a military issue, whether it is economics, whether it is our food security, whether it is, you name anything, we have to be self-reliant. We can be dependent only upon non-essentials, luxury items. If we can afford, we can be, dependent on others. Doesn't matter. But all our essentials, a country like India cannot afford to be lax on not being self-reliant. We have to be. There is no choice about it. And when we become self-reliant, after not being self-reliant for so long, particularly in the recent past, the process is not going to be easy. It's going to be painful. There's going to be collateral damage to a lot of people. But then we have to take it as a mission. जुनून चाहिए इसके लिए, सेल्फ रिलायंट होने के लिए जुनून चाहिए, जज्बा चाहिए. Very passionate interventions have to be there. And when you talk about government policies, yes, government policies do make a difference. But ultimately it is for us, the people of India, to stand up and decide that no matter what happens, we will be self-reliant. And self-reliance does not necessarily mean zero imports. Self-reliant also does not necessarily mean we close our doors to everything that is good outside. But I'm sorry to say, in the present context, if we analyze the whole thing, self-reliance is important. But when we look at the neighborhood, there is the issue of boycott also. Two countries in the recent past, and I visited both these countries n number of times in the past. The people are nice. They are as good or as bad as we are. But their country, their governments, their system of governance is not at all trustworthy. And therefore, we have no choice but to have zero dependence on these two countries, namely China, and of course we are not dependent on Pakistan anyway. But certainly in the near future, or maybe even in the long term, no matter what settlements we have with the China, we cannot trust them for dependence upon for our strategic and essentials. it will take decades and decades before we can, get into a system where we can trust them. We may depend upon them, but we cannot trust them. And therefore, the sustainability has to evolve from within our own system. Self-reliance has to be all the resources, and the country like India has all the resources. Sone ki chidiya hum kalate the. I mean, the whole world was dependent upon us. There was a time, and today we are dependent upon. I mean, Diwali ka pataka and the Diwali lights we are importing. I mean, I'm really surprised how this has gone wrong. So to that extent, thank you very much for these.
Okay.
With words, I'll conclude.
Yeah. Thank you, Divyaji. I think now may I invite Architect Habib Khan, President of the Council, to talk about what policies can help self-reliance, and can technology and skill development play a part, and how can Council help spread awareness of local materials to sustain our economy through the educational process. Over to you, Architect Habib.
Thank you, Rajuji, and thank you, for inviting me on this esteemed panel to discuss self-reliance, which Divyaji just said it's a most hot topic these days. Continuing to what he was saying, the concept of self-reliance was always in our system, in the vernacular traditions, in the way we used to live before the advent of industrialization and globalization that happened. And somewhere on the way we lost, and I totally agree with what he said, even the Diwali diyas and the lanterns, and even the goddess Lakshmi is Chinese these days. So we need to really, really look into where we are going. And this pandemic has opened our eyes, has shown us a concept where we can very well be self-reliant and self-dependent. Like I always say, this pandemic has not broken the world, but has shown a broken world to us. And that's a very important point that we need to understand, that the economy that we were all so dependent on and we were so gaga about has actually, been so fragile. The entire system has been so fragile that 2 months or 3 months of lockdown has really, really crumpled it, and the future appears to be very bleak. We need to really look into the concept of Atmanirbharta, because that will probably avoid all such kind of pandemics or disasters or such kind of calamities befalling this earth. And the concept of globalization, to what extent and what is the relevance of the globalization, what is its importance is to be really thought over by all of us. And probably if you see and if you think and if you introspect, you will find that a cocooned economy probably is most self-reliant and most viable alternative as a country, as a city, as individual, as family units, like Divyaji just said. The self-empowerment is very important. The concept of self-empowerment is very important, and unless that happens, we will not become self-reliant, and the concept of self-reliance will go to dogs, so to say. When we talk of technology, when we talk of all aspects related to technology, it has to be indigenous. I am a very strong believer of this. It has to be indigenously developed technology, and the revival of lost skills, especially in the building trade. We talk of our cultural values, cultural systems, religious values, religious systems. We are all continuing from thousands and thousands of years ago, but we have totally forgotten our building trade, the traditional building trade, the traditional skills and knowledge base that we all had. We've totally lost it. We need to revive them, and we need to understand that the chain of evolution that has been broken by the advent of industrialization and then subsequent internationalism and globalization has to be restored back. This chain, if you recall, pre-industrial revolution was a very intrinsic and a cohesive chain which continued within the confined cocoons of our local vernacular societies. And we need to bring back. This does not mean that we are going back and we are retrograding to any antiquated system, but this means that we are working on a traditional wisdom and and empowering ourselves and empowering our country to grow on those basic tradition and traditional wisdom that we all had. But this has to come with a certain rider, and that rider is quality. We cannot compromise on quality. We cannot compromise on the pricing. We cannot compromise on the levels. I wouldn't say international levels, but we need to have certain quality parameters along with the revival and the self-reliance, and that's very important. And that we as Indians have to understand the concept of quality, which has to come along with being self-reliant. If it does not come, then self-reliance as a concept and self-empowerment as a concept will fail. Because to be honest and brutally honest, we are not as worried or as concerned about the quality that we deliver, and that quality means the products that we make. The quality means the services that we give, and of course, the economic aspect cannot be overlooked. Why did we go to China to buy furniture or products? Because of the cost and because of the range that they offered. And slowly and gradually, if you realize, our manufacturers, our industries also rose up to that particular level. And I'm very happy to say that the quality and the product range made by our own indigenous producers and companies is rising quite high. So that quality has to be kept. And when it comes to services, when it comes to architectural services, when it comes to services directly linked, and all the cognate and the allied activities linked to our profession, needs to be really, really looked into. Now, as a policy, council is a regulatory authority, regulatory body, and there have been a lot of questions and debates about what is the mandate of the council and what council can do. But if you look at the wider and the larger ambit of our profession, I feel council also has a moral stand and a moral ground to look into this. And we are working on many aspects I'm sure you guys are aware of, and we're going to roll out many more policies and many more avenues where we're going to make society aware of architecture. We're going to make society aware of the role of architects, and to make society aware that architect is an indispensable entity in the society, because he looks after the quality of life, which is intangible. And this intangible aspect of our profession has to be made aware to the society at large. And when that happens, a large section of our society will understand the importance of the quality of life. This intangible aspect has been neglected by society, and they do not they do not take it seriously. The tangible aspect of your health when you are sick, which is taken care by medical profession, is given more importance than the intangible aspect, because we forget that we are living almost 24 hours in spaces designed by architects, which directly or indirectly affect the mental health, the well-being of our society, and that is the intangible aspect. And we need to work out policies to make the society aware of this intangible, very important intangible aspect of our profession. And very important, like I'm telling you, let us be very frank, brutally honest, apart from few practices, I'm not passing a generalized statement, but the quality of services that we offer is lacking. And we need to really look into it, and council is working on techniques, and I'm sure we will be augmenting and reinforcing this vitally missing aspect from our profession and practice. And this is the time self-reliance happens only if you are crossing a flooded river or a rivulet. You have to hold hands, and when you hold hands, you make a chain, and then you are able to cross that stormy river or whatever. So we have to hold hands. We have to stay united. We have to support each other, and support each other in our profession and outside the profession, where all allied and cognate activities are indulged in. We need to hold hands, and we need to support each other to become self-reliant. Without holding hands, we cannot be self-reliant. We realize once again, we have to bring back the traditional skills of our craftsmen, of our people, workmen who had these indigenous skills, and we have produced marvelous architecture in the past. And we have to use them with the knowledge of technology and the skills that we have. We need to use them and utilize them and augment our building skills, construction skills. And we have to develop technology indigenously. Like once again, I said we have to be not dependent on anyone else from outside. If a Western country or if a foreign country can do a certain job, X amount of job in X amount of time, cost, and a quality, why can we not do it? We have to understand that, we have to input that in our minds, and we have to, really feel proud from inside of being self-reliant, of being Indian. And when that happens, that indigenous genius inside us will come out, and I'm sure we'll be able to do it. And these are tough times for our profession, and times are going to be not so easy so soon. So we have to remain focused. We have to not lose sight of what we want to do and not get depressed or lost on the way. We have to stay focused. We have to augment our knowledge in these times and look forward to times which will be not only self-reliant, but we will empower our society and empower our architects, empower our building trade, empower our traditional skills to make a more vibrant and a self-reliant India. I am looking at a dream a few years ahead when everything that I use in my project will be locally made, including technology, including materials, including skills. And my building would be a 0-kilometer building. That is the dream that I have, and I hope we all strive towards it. Thank you.
Excellent, Habibji. In fact, I want to relate your own institution, Priyadarshini Institute of Architecture, School of Architecture, where whatever you have been saying, you have practiced. In fact,
Yes.
the roofing of the building is with local stone.
Yes, it is a 100-kilometer building. Everything in the building has been sourced within 100 kilometers of the city where it is being built.
So that is an exemplary work, reflecting all your thoughts.
Thank you.
And one more thing, what we were discussing is when you were speaking about self-reliance, how self-reliant are, as we architects and our own practices, how much self-reliance are we practicing ourselves? Or we are outsourcing too much is also a question for the next round. Maybe we'll discuss it a little later. I think I would like to invite Dada Satish Magar to share his experiences, on the self-reliance and a few points for discussion, as I had already shared. See, the building industry is facing a crisis. And to what extent can self-reliance on local material and workers reduce costs? What kind of policies will help in providing housing for all sections, especially low-income and migrant workers? How to go about building self-reliant structures? See, because today we have seen many sections of the society, like migrant workers and low-income groups, having a mismatch in the overall development of habitat for all sections of the society. So I would like you to dwell on these points.
Well, good afternoon to you all. It's been a pleasure to be here with such an extremely esteemed, experienced panel. So I was just looking at the experience. It was more than 250 years. So 250 years of experience coming out now. I have basically 5 issues on self-reliance. And we are speaking on self-reliance because of this exceptional pandemic situation. But looking at the situation, what we have, looking at the status at what we are today, the whole world under, I have 5 issues on self-reliance, which we can talk on. Number 1 is labor. The second is the social housing structure. Third is material. Fourth is the structures we build. And the fifth point is urban renewal. So these are the 5 self-reliant issues which I think we have to look on. When you look at labor, see, there's a lot of issues which are spoken about on migrant labor. There's a lot of issues which are spoken about the housing of the labor, the conditions on which are, cases of Dharavi or the slums which we create because we don't provide housing for them. I think as far as labor is concerned, we will have to concentrate more on the local labor. We have to identify them and train them to be as a part of the whole system. I think we'll have to come to a situation where we simplify work. Use simple technologies to bring efficiency in work, so everyone should not feel that being a construction worker requires a lot of strength, a lot of hard work. So I think that is extremely important for us to look at. Providing for housing, now the central government and even the state government has come out with policies where rental homes can be made, but how they are to be made, how you need to cross subsidize them, who's to make them is the issue which we need to discuss in times to come. The second issue what we have is social housing. We make houses for people who can afford to pay, but we do not make houses for people who we need to work for us. So this has come forward in the local rules for at least townships in Maharashtra, where making social housing for people who work in the houses, the housemates, the drivers, the other people is become mandatory, where cross subsidization is done by way of sell it at the cost of construction. The FSI is being awarded to be used elsewhere. So social housing is something which needs to come in. Economic designs in this is something which you architects will have to work on, because everyone talks about social housing is something which is 25 square meters or 20 square meters, but they also have a family. So we need to look at different avenues on this. Third is material. Habib spoke on going to China and buying, because we are not cost competitive. Why we are not cost competitive is because we have not standardized. We are not standardizing. Every developer, every architect has his own standards. I think a time has come, like we have the building standards, we'll have to have an architectural standards, we'll have to have developer standards where we have standardization. So then it becomes easier for us, for the SMEs, the MSMEs to work on. I think a time has come for us where we have to work on the ancillary model, which has been worked on in the automobile industry. So even real estate, I think we'll have to work on an ancillary model. Well, they'll have to hold hands with the local people and see that we get the production done, which is required. So the fourth point is structures. Self-reliant structures, whether we look at energy efficient structures, whether we use of indigenous, even plantations are required to be done. Even the landscape, I think we are so much exotic in that we have forgotten our own Indian indigenous species, which needs to, whether solar, rooftop solar can be used, in these times to make it more self-reliant. And the fifth point which I need to speak at, which I need to highlight, is urban renewal. We are a mess when it comes to urban. I think we should look at this as an opportunity in disaster and move forward and restructure everything. We build houses for the rich in downtown area, and we build houses for the poor 25 kilometers away and expect them to travel the distance and come. In such situations which we are experiencing now, the lockdown situations, which I hope they don't come again, but we don't know whether they'll come again. Can we have integrated planning and integrated development done? Can we look at redoing these slums again? Can we look at the total policy advocacy on urban renewal? And I think if that is done, probably we will be much better off than what we are. I think these are the 4 or 5 points which I had to stress.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Magar. I think you've mentioned a lot of issues and ideas, for us to, reflect upon. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, I think before we get architect Zabin and Suresh on board, I think I was talking about self-reliance of our own profession and practices. I would like to now request architect Divya Kush to elaborate on this. How architects, can be more self-reliant in their own approach to projects and have least dependence on external forces, which nowadays, you are outsourcing most of the things.
So self-reliance within our own offices, within our own profession, is something which is taught to us right from our first year. All the subjects for which we take outside help are taught to us whether it is structures, whether it is services, whether you landscape, surveying, leveling. I mean, you name any subject, it is taught to us. But having said that, these subjects are not taught to us to practice those professions, really speaking. They are taught to us to understand these subjects, to be able to coordinate with our fellow consultants, and there should be room for all our fellow professionals. It's a composite, outcome, very complex, problems that we face in building design, and we need expert opinions. When we say self-reliance, it doesn't mean we don't depend upon our fellow professionals within our country. My concept of self-reliance is, I'm really astonished. For a housing project, if we have to have foreign consultants, nothing can be worse than that, I mean, if we can't design a 500 apartment housing within our own country, it is beyond my comprehension. I can understand once in a while you have a 2,000 bedded hospital, and all kinds of technologies are to be involved into it. And there are some iconic projects where you have international competitions. After all, you bring in great ideas from outside also. Chandigarh has been a great example. Some people may like, some may not like. But the point is, it was a new chapter in the architecture of India. So we have to, as a society, start believing in the, as Habib Khan just said, in the indigenous genius. We have the capabilities within our country. Most of the things can be done locally. We must trust our people that they can do it. Unless we begin to say, yes, we can, we will never do it. Every small thing, we are, dependent upon outside. A TV, is being important. In 75 years of our independence, we can't, develop a TV set. This is, not taken, furniture, as was being mentioned. What kind of a furniture we are importing from, outside? All our local people who are, great furniture makers, are getting out of business and out of skills also. Over a period of time, slowly and slowly, the crafts that was being transferred from generation to generation, that's going out. The next generation is not willing to do the job their parents were doing. So, because we have not given them the due respect their professions, their crafts deserve. As Mr. Magar just said, time has come to address the situation of migrant and unorganized labor, particularly in our profession. We have never treated them with the kind of respect that they deserve. We, just as any valuable material we bring to the site, we have a store for it. We take due care that it doesn't get spoiled, But the worker who is going to build that building has to live in a tin shed or tarpaulin or whatever, what is this? He doesn't have 2 square meals assured to him for 365 days a year. So our cost must include, we should not be a source of cheap labor. Our country should be a source of quality product and affordable price, but not saving on the labor cost. The kind of wages we are paying is pitiable. And that even in big cities, and if you go to smaller cities, today, if you go to a town just 200 kilometers from Delhi, the unskilled worker gets less than 200 rupees or maybe 200 rupees. That's all about it. What does he do? So we have to treat our workforce with due respect, give them adequate facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
And we must stop dependence on these foreign countries, and that's where government policies also matter. The kind of conditions they are put for appointing an architect, most of the even big offices of the country cannot qualify to do a job. And one example I always quote: in Asian Games 1982, each and every building was designed by Indian architects. and all those buildings are still under use. Now come to the Commonwealth Games. None of the buildings was designed by Indian architects, and none of that building is under use today. In less than 10 years, they are out of use.
Okay, thank you.
After the games, they have never been used.
Okay. Thank you, Deepti, for your views. I think now we have got Architect Zabin back. She is in the right place now. I can see. Okay. Okay. Zabin, now you can. I think we can elaborate on some of the points which we can discuss. See, the awareness of interiors has increased manifold. How can we encourage use of locally available products to support the artisans? Can interior designers maximize the use of space and contribute to overall reduction in built space? How interiors can contribute to self-sufficient buildings, for example, sustainable buildings? How interiors can contribute along with architecture for self-sufficiency in buildings and sustainable concepts? Over to you, Zabin.
Thank you so much, Raju. Thank you so much, Raju. It was quite unfortunate that I missed certain part of this discussion, but very happy to be back, and a very good morning to all of you. Basically, I'm an architect who is also an interior designer and who also believes that design actually doesn't have any boundaries. It encompasses and embraces all disciplines, because all of us try to make a change in life or the quality of life for people. That said, I understand that your questions are particularly kind of oriented towards interior design, and I am the president of IIID, which is an honor, so I will also try to address your questions from that interior design point of view. As you said, the awareness of interior design these days, probably for the last 2 decades, we have seen that it is going on the rise. And the reasons would be that probably the poverty line, that line which we are all concerned about, has gone dramatically down due to a lot of factors. Now, globally, we have been able to contain poverty to a lot of extent, but still we have that fight to go. So, architecture, design, whatever it is about providing for a primary need of human beings. So when we are struggling for our ends to meet, that starts with a roof over one's head, we are satisfied. But once that is done, once we go ahead, once we are a little bit more capable of demanding for more, we come to the realization that, yes, what we have within this roof, the space, that is what actually conditions us. Our emotional, physical, psychological well-being, even the way we think, the way we act, is all really, really associated to these spaces. We have this famous saying from Winston Churchill saying that first we shape our buildings and then they shape our people. So that way the demand on interiors, even from the side of the people, were coming up, not as something like it could be really very, very basic, but something wherein we have to put learned experiences and thought process. Another possible reason is that life is not at all simple now. It has become complex due to a lot of developments happening, a lot of classes, a lot of specialization happening. We have to think of different kinds of interiors which addresses different needs of people and different kinds of people. So that also wanted some kind of dedicated approach towards interior design, and we saw that awareness of interior design going up as a profession coming true. Today, discussing interior design in these pandemic season or time, we all the more realize that when you look about all the spaces, people spend used to spend, as per standards, 90% of the time in one or other interior space. Now probably it is touching almost 98, 99% for this lockdown and all that. So definitely what our interiors hold for us is going to be talked about much, much in detail than ever before. The awareness and the attitude towards interior and the design and the complexity of it is going to change. I think even we used to think about interior design and aesthetic, kind of art and science. If so, aesthetics is going to change. Probably it will be about hygiene and health. The way what we see is it cleanliness, what we feel is whether it is cleanliness, what we smell, whether it's the fragrance of some kind of a Lysol, probably that is what's going to give us confidence. So including every element of design, not only in interiors, it has some kind of, redefinitions which are waiting for. So that is about the awareness part of it. Now, the second part of your question was about, now that this awareness is coming up, that's how I understand, how can we channel this duty towards artisans and our crafts to actually, kind of flourish with this? My thing is, I am totally surprised that whenever we talk about artisans, crafts and all that, we use a very different, wrong tagline. It is help our crafts. They are dying. Please oblige. No, that's not the language. Help yourself. Otherwise, you are going to die. That is the message today's man listen to. And this is not just philosophical. 2035 design as a profession is a big question. If we are just going to use the softwares and do 2D, 3D design, then there are robots who can do it. Then there are softwares who can do it. What we are talking about is, if we want to preserve this profession of design, architecture, interior design, be creative, be passionate, be compassionate, not just 2D and 3D, bring in the million dimensions, which actually will tell human beings that they are safe, they are secure, they are confident, because that is the basic things which one needs to feel self-reliant, to feel empowered. So I think crafts is not an external thing. So this time, particularly in IIID, we are saying crafted design. That's what we are using. Craft is not an object or something which we usually look at. It's an entire philosophy. Putting your heads, hands and hearts together to bring something beautiful which nothing can match, which no robot can kind of compete with. That is the need of the time. Because look at human beings. Forget about the deteriorating environment and nature. Look at the deteriorating feel or the make of human beings who are just people now with no human part of it much. We need to bring that back, because that holds the key for this entire planet and the people. Again, here we hear a lot of cries saying that save the planet. Wrong. The planet doesn't need us. It will survive. It has its own ways to manage this. Save yourself. If people will have to have a robust, resilient life, it is for us. So understanding crafts, artisans, that culture is very important if we need to survive as a profession and professionals who can actually save human beings. So that's my take on it. And let me come to the next part. How can we maximize the use while we are designing? Here again, we see, I think, a somersault of thinking process. Like Dalai Lama said, the paradox of today is smaller families but bigger homes. We design houses with the money we don't have to please the people we don't like. That is how it is. But now look at it. In our homes, residences, where it was only family, residences is now going to look at a huge lot of change, because it has multitask. It has to now do multitasking. It is your workspace, it is your school, it is your office, it is your hospital, everything. So residential, because yesterday Rahul Mehrotra was talking about preparedness. We will pass this pandemic. soon. Let's hope so. But there will be another soon. That's the kind of doubts which have been created. So how can we be prepared? So is a residence now going to be like a pod for each, which comes together so that it can be isolation units, it can be a bank, it can be an office, but coming together with some kind of a feel for a family. So even when we were counteracting this, ever magnifying size of the house, I don't know now how we are going to redefine it. Probably we are going to look at residences which are a little bit more elaborated rather than probably the offices. Look at the office buildings, institutional buildings, they are all lying vacant. And we are very happy working at home, from home. We may not need that spaces, or it could be floating office spaces wherein we share like one day a week or something like that. Or if we cannot do away with the residential part, or you have to go to the office, probably offices will have to look at a residential aspect also to it. Or who knows, we are all very safe in the car. Maybe offices and so many buildings might become like drive-ins. Parking lot designs where people come in groups and have some kind of a common facility could be an answer. So we are now looking at designs which can have, so many different varieties of answers. So that is about maximizing. We have to kind of redefine it. And then self-sufficiency is again empowerment, and then that empowerment comes from our core feeling. Nothing can substitute that. Whatever you do, tomorrow something else is going to come. To have own belief that you are creative human beings who have come across like 70,000 years from that ape to this man who is the crown of this planet now. We have actually faced a lot of pandemics, lot of difficult situations, and we have kind of succeeded in it. So we have this primal nature of addressing our problems and taking it head on. Design needs to empower that. And I think when our primal feelings together with design inputs join hands, we can be self-sufficient. Self-sufficient people, self-sufficient spaces, self-sufficient design, and therefore a self-sufficient world. Thank you.
Thank you, Zabin. I think a very, very insightful and a very passionate, clear view of all the aspects of, design, spaces, self-reliance, and various thoughts. Excellent, disposition towards, all the aspects of self-reliance. I think I must thank you very much for that. Though you came a little late, I think it was worth waiting for you. And I'm happy that you have come back. And it's very, very clear. We have heard you so well now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Now, I'll come back to Habib. See, he used a very interesting phrase, which also Divya elaborated. Genius in indigenous. I think that's a very good thought. I think I would like him to elaborate a little more on that.
No, I feel the concept of self-reliance has three circles. The outermost circle is the macro, where you look at the country as a whole. And then the middle circle is somewhere between macro and micro, where the profession comes in, our profession comes in, whether it is design, architecture, wider ambit of all related to architecture. And the innermost circle is micro, which is yourself, your own individual self. And it is here in this micro circle, microcosm of this circle, where we need to believe in ourselves, of self-reliance. And when that happens, all the other circles are taken care of. And when I talk of indigenous genius, is related to this inner circle where we believe in our own selves, saying that our minds, our hearts, and our own selves are full of that genius. And if they are not, we will develop them into being genius. And that will happen when we introspect. And that microcosm of that concept is wherein you believe in what you're doing. You can, I can, and everyone can. And if I am not an Einstein or I am not a Newton, probably I will try becoming one. If I am not a Michael Graves or a Frank Gehry or anyone else, I will try becoming one. Why can I not become one? What is that is, stopping me from not becoming one. And that is where you start believing in yourself. You start developing your mind, you start developing your hearts, first of all. Then the mind comes in. And that is that indigenous genius that I'm talking of. Now, this was reflected very clearly in the way we used to build in our earlier times, where each and every component, whether it was design, whether it was construction, whether it was a building element, which was, a genius work of art, genius work of arriving at problems, solutions to problems, and it was a genius way of, looking at a wider nature of things, and that is what it basically means being indigenous genius. So when it happens in my practice, in my employment, in my people who my employees, when I start becoming self-reliant, when I start believing in myself, we will be helping our profession. It starts from one drop and it becomes ocean, like it says in a cliched way. But we have to believe in that indigenous genius, in that micro circle that I'm talking of.
Yeah, thank you, Habib. I think if you look at history, I think India is replete with excellent examples of various typologies of architecture, which have all been a source of inspiration for many of us. But if you look at how they would have done this and over generations, but even at that time, continuing the same thought process, relying on their own intuition and design capability, and passing on the legacy from generation to generation to complete each and every monument or every temple or other structures.
That chain of evolution that I was talking of.
Yeah,
it didn't matter, where the main mason died, and it was carried over by his next generation, but the building and the architecture was same.
And when there are no drawings.
Without drawings, yes.
It all happened from the mind.
And still today, cities are identified by those monuments, not by modern architectural monuments. So we have to really look into where we are doing and what we are doing with modern architecture or the current architecture of today.
Yes, I think that's a very valid thing for all of us to think and introspect. I think we were also touching upon some of the, for example, furniture, what Divyaji was talking about. See, if you see the furniture of India, maybe about 50 years back and back, I think the type of furniture in most of our palaces and even the houses and things like that were all made by Indian artisans and carpenters. Now, slowly, with the advent of globalization and all that, that industry has slowly, almost come to an extent by more imports and things like that. So this is where the government policy can help in encouraging such entrepreneurs who are artisans and things, and allied industries to support. I think that will come forward maybe in the coming years. I think we should see something from the government which encourages local industries and people and their own ideas and their inputs. Mr. Magar, would you like to add something to what we said earlier?
We have to develop the indigenous skills which we have. And why do we depend on foreign architects? I mean, I can give you my own example. In the last 20 years, the only time I used a foreign architect was to design a mall, because that is something which we don't have with us. That is what I thought at that point of time. And I still believe that there are certain things where we need national expertise to come in. What I think lacks and what I think we need to do is we need to feel proud of what we are doing. It is very easy to look at somebody else and applaud their work, but if our people start to be proud of what we are doing and we embrace technology the way it should be used, I think these issues will not come. The self-reliance will have to come in because we have that talent. I mean, it is our people who go and do work outside. It is our people who go and design softwares outside. It is our people who do all the contracts in the Middle East were executed by our people. But when it comes back here, I think we have some fascination historically for outsiders. That's why the British came and ruled here. That's why the Mughals came and ruled here. We have that fascination. We don't believe in ourselves. But COVID, I think this post-COVID period will teach us to believe in ourselves. I think that will be much better.
Well, thank you, Magarji. I think my own feeling is that institutions like CREDAI, where you have the most of the top developers in the country, I think it is time that all of us try to think and then try to use indigenous professionals for designing most of the projects. I think what Divyaji was saying about inviting foreign architects for doing apartment buildings and things like that. I mean, you can think about it. I think that's one thing which can support our own professionals, and we have a very large team of youngsters also looking forward to a lot of avenues and things like that, and they will have very good ideas and they have very good thoughts. And I think it is up to the builder community to come forward and utilize their services in whatever. I think like CREDAI, the developers can really float some competitions for projects which will really help improve the design process in the country. I think I request Magarji to keep this in mind while
I extend all my cooperation to that.
But I think if the
That's right. So I take this opportunity to be, me to be moderator on this panel, and I value the suggestions of each and every one of you. They were very, very, insightful. They had a lot of meaning and a lot of depth and a lot of points to ponder for all of us as architects. I think a lot of issues and a lot of good suggestions were made in this panel, and I thank each one of you for this, for the time, your effort, and your thoughts.